You ever notice how the most dangerous chemistry in music doesn't come from rivals, but from family? Not the kind of family that politely claps at your graduation. I'm talking about the kind that roasts you at the dinner table, borrows your clothes without asking, and somehow still shows up when the world feels like it's collapsing. That's the frequency Baby Keem and Kendrick Lamar operate on. And unless you and your cousin are splitting custody of a Grammy, you probably don't know what that level of shared ambition, shared trauma, and shared brilliance feels like. By the way, welcome to Celebrity Rap Life, where the spotlight never fades, comebacks are built from chaos, and every headline tells a deeper story. Like, subscribe, and stay locked in because the story is about to unfold. But here's the twist. For two artists who dissect generational curses and survivor's guilt like surgeons, when Keem and Kendrick link up, they often sound like kids who just got kicked to the backyard table during Thanksgiving. Loud, petty, playful, reckless in the most charming way possible, all shenanigans, no shame. Every collaboration between them feels like eavesdropping on a private joke the rest of the rap game isn't fully in on. From the anarchic bounce of the Hillbillies to their stadium-sized ad-libs echoing through Dodger Stadium, they've built a lane that feels less like a strategic business move and more like a family group chat brought to life. They tease, they flex, they threaten to punch you in the face, and somehow, through all the chaos, they make it feel like summer break. Now they double down on that energy with Good Flirts, a standout moment from Baby Keem's new album Casino. And if you expected a dense manifesto or a Pulitzer-coded sermon, you're in the wrong living room. This record doesn't aim for moral high ground, it aims for butterflies, for smirks, for that nervous laugh you let out when you're pretending you don't care, but you absolutely do. Good Flirts is about an on-again, off-again situation that feels less like heartbreak and more like recess. There's something sweet about it. Not polished sweet, not candlelight dinner sweet. It's juvenile in the best way. The kind of sweet that smells like cafeteria pizza and cheap perfume. It feels young, unfiltered, slightly unserious. And the production carries that spirit effortlessly. The beat leans into a down-tempo Motown groove so clean and radio-ready, it feels like it slipped through a time portal. You can almost imagine Berry Gordy nodding in approval somewhere, hearing echoes of a classic formula repurposed for a generation that grew up on streaming algorithms instead of jukeboxes. The drums don't demand attention. They glide. The bass hums with nostalgia. It's structured enough for FM radio, but loose enough for two cousins to clown over. Then there's the call and response dynamic with New York singer Momo Boyd. She doesn't just show up, she steadies the whole room. While Keem and Kendrick act like two musketeers who just discovered flirting is a competitive sport, Momo stands grounded, controlled, cool. She slips into a cadence reminiscent of MC Light, not as imitation, but as lineage. She carries the poise of someone who's heard every line before and still refuses to be impressed. That contrast is where the magic lives. Keem enters with a warbled refrain that feels exaggerated on purpose. He stretches his vocals to the edge of cartoonish and somehow makes it endearing. There's a coup in his delivery that blends early 2000s rap flirtation with glossy pop accessibility. It's part fabulous charm, part modern radio haze. It's catchy without begging, vulnerable without admitting too much. He sounds like someone trying to play it cool and failing in the most adorable way possible. And then Kendrick steps in. If Keem is the kid nervously passing notes in class, Kendrick is the older cousin who's already been suspended twice, but still gives surprisingly thoughtful advice. His verse on Good Flirts is where the song's personality sharpens. He balances a dorkable confession with sly wit. One moment he's brushing off the idea of the friend zone with a grin, the next he's tossing in a line about gossiping like young thug with a wink that feels both self-aware and slightly ridiculous. It's not a heavy verse, it's not trying to rewrite the state of hip-hop, it's playful, but beneath the humor there's intention. When Kendrick muses about meditating on emotional attachments, it almost feels like he's parodying his own reputation for introspection. He's known for unpacking trauma in painstaking detail, for mapping out family trees of pain and pride. Yet here he is, flirting, teasing, complimenting his partner's body with exaggerated repetition like a teenager who just learned how to count. It's absurd, and that's the point. Because for artists whose solo catalogs are drenched in societal commentary and internal warfare, this record feels like a release valve, a reminder that healing doesn't always arrive wrapped in therapy language and tearful confession. Sometimes it shows up as laughter, as joking about love, as staying up too late talking about girls after making sure the house is quiet. There's an imagined scene that hangs over Good Flirts. Two cousins, back home, parents asleep, TV volume low, a conversation that starts with jokes and somehow drifts into honest curiosity about relationships. Not the performative kind, the awkward kind, the kind where you admit you might actually like someone and then immediately pretend you were joking. That's the emotional temperature of this song. It's easy to forget that before the accolades and the cultural weight, both Kendrick and Keem were just kids navigating complicated neighborhoods and even more complicated expectations. In a documentary short released during the casino rollout, Keem gave fans a glimpse behind the curtain. Kendrick spoke candidly about their family, about what he described as a psychological warfare to break generational curses. That phrase lingers. Psychological warfare suggests battle, resistance, strategy. It suggests that survival in their environment wasn't accidental, it was fought for, earned, inch by inch. In their solo work, that fight is front and center. Kendrick dissects inherited trauma with surgical precision. Keem wrestles with identity, ego, and vulnerability in ways that feel raw and sometimes jagged. But Good Flirts proposes something radical in its simplicity. What if healing also looks like joy? What if breaking generational cycles isn't only about confronting pain, but also about allowing yourself to be light, to be unserious, to flirt without suspicion, to laugh without scanning the room for danger? The song doesn't preach that message, it embodies it. There's a looseness in their flows that feels intentional. They interrupt each other, they echo lines, they ad-lib like they're trying to make the other one crack up mid-take. It feels less like two megastars calculating a hit, and more like cousins daring each other to go further. And that chemistry cannot be manufactured. Plenty of artists collaborate. Few sound like they grew up arguing over the same remote control. When Keem and Kendrick share a track, there's an ease that cuts through any expectation of grandeur. They're not competing for dominance, they're building off each other's quirks. Keem leans into exaggerated melodies. Kendrick answers with off-kilter cadences. It's playful one-upmanship, not rivalry. Even the structure of Good Flirts mirrors that back-and-forth dynamic. Verses don't feel isolated, they feel conversational. Lines bounce, energy shifts. It mimics the rhythm of flirting itself. One person pushes, the other pulls back. A joke lands, someone pretends to be offended. It's a dance disguised as a song. And that Motown-inspired production anchors it all in familiarity. There's something nostalgic about the groove. It feels like driving with the windows down at dusk, like a soundtrack that could have existed decades ago, but now carries modern slang and modern insecurities. That blend of old soul and new irreverence is where Casino as an album seems to thrive. Keem isn't abandoning complexity, he's just exploring a different shade of it. On Good Flirts, complexity isn't about existential dread, it's about emotional ambiguity, about not knowing whether you're in love or just addicted to the chase. Kendrick's presence amplifies that theme without overwhelming it. He doesn't hijack the record, he enhances it. He understands the assignment. Be charming, be slightly ridiculous, be self-aware enough to know that you're playing a role and enjoy it anyway. For fans accustomed to Kendrick delivering sermons wrapped in rhyme, this might feel like a detour, but it's actually consistent with a larger arc. Growth doesn't mean abandoning seriousness, it means choosing when to carry it and when to set it down. Good Flirts sets it down. Not forever, just long enough to breathe. There's something almost rebellious about two artists known for depth deciding to make a song that simply feels good. No heavy thesis, no elaborate metaphor about America, just chemistry, just cousins laughing over a beat that feels like it could soundtrack a school dance. And yet, even in its lightness, the song carries subtext. When Kendrick talks about emotional attachments, even jokingly, it's a nod to the fact that they've both done the work. They've faced the shadows, so now they can afford to play in the sunlight. That duality has become their signature. They can stand in a stadium and roar about systemic injustice. They can also whisper about a crush with exaggerated bravado. They can be prophets, they can be clowns. They refuse to be boxed into one emotional register. Good Flirts doesn't try to compete with their heavier collaborations, it complements them. It adds dimension. It reminds listeners that even the most introspective artists have an inner teenager who still gets nervous texting someone back. And maybe that's why the song resonates. Because beneath the accolades and analysis, we're all still navigating that awkward space between confidence and vulnerability. We all perform coolness. We all overthink signals. We all pretend we don't care more than we do. Keem and Kendrick just happen to soundtrack that experience with better punchlines. In the end, Good Flirts feels less like a calculated single and more like a snapshot, a moment of levity captured between two artists who understand both the weight of their legacy and the necessity of laughter. It suggests that breaking generational curses doesn't require constant solemnity. Sometimes it requires joy loud enough to drown out the past. Two cousins, one groove, no armor. Just flirting, just fun, just proof that even in the middle of psychological warfare, there's room to pull up a chair at the kids' table and laugh like nothing ever hurt you. Welcome to the culture. Hit subscribe, stay curious, and never stop listening.